When Italy entered the Second World War in June 1940, its military vehicles appeared formidable on paper, but masked serious weaknesses in design, production, and doctrine. Built for terrains ranging from alpine mountains to North African deserts, these machines reflected limited industrial capacity and material shortages. They fought across Europe, Africa, and the Mediterranean, shaping Italy's wartime experience from invasion to defense. Italian tank development began in the aftermath of the First World War, but limited resources and industrial capacity constrained advancement. The Fiat Ansaldo L3/33 and L3/35 tankettes represented Italy's most numerous armored vehicles at the war's outbreak. These two-man vehicles mounted twin 8mm machine guns in a small, lightly armored hull. Inspired by British Cardinaloy designs, they were intended for reconnaissance and infantry support in colonial operations. Their thin armor, typically between 6 and 15 millimeters, proved vulnerable to anti-tank rifles and heavy machine guns. The vehicle's low profile offered some protection, but their minimal armament made them ineffective against even light tanks. Italian forces employed thousands of these tankettes in East Africa, North Africa, and the Balkans, where they performed adequately against poorly equipped opponents but suffered catastrophic losses when facing British armor. Their speed and mechanical reliability represented their primary virtues, though these could not compensate for inadequate firepower and protection. The Fiat Ansaldo M11/39 medium tank entered production in limited numbers just before the war. It mounted a 37mm gun in a hull sponson, with twin 8mm machine guns in a rotating turret. This awkward configuration limited the main gun's traverse and created a tall silhouette vulnerable to enemy fire. The vehicle's riveted armor construction proved susceptible to spalling, where armor fragments injured crews even when shells failed to penetrate. Only 100 were manufactured before production shifted to improved designs. Those that saw action in North Africa demonstrated the fundamental inadequacy of Italian tank design against British forces. The M13/40 medium tank attempted to address these deficiencies by mounting a 47mm gun in a proper turret. This represented Italy's primary battle tank throughout the North African campaign. The vehicle featured a 4-man crew, armor up to 42mm on the frontal surfaces, and a diesel engine providing reasonable range. Its main gun could engage British light tanks effectively but struggled against the armor of Matilda and Crusader tanks. The M13/40's riveted construction continued to pose crew safety risks, and its relatively low power-to-weight ratio limited mobility in desert conditions. Italian tank units achieved occasional tactical successes with these vehicles, particularly in the war's early phases, but they consistently proved inferior to British armor in sustained engagements. Over 700 were produced. The M14/41 and M15/42 represented incremental improvements to the M13/40 design. The M14/41 featured an improved engine and better air filtration for desert operations. The M15/42 received a more powerful engine and slightly thicker armor, though these enhancements came too late and in too few numbers to affect Italian fortunes. Both variants maintained the basic layout and armament of the M13/40, inheriting its fundamental limitations. Together, they accounted for fewer than 800 vehicles. Italian heavy tank development produced the P26/40, designed to match Allied medium tanks. This vehicle mounted a 75mm gun capable of engaging contemporary British and American armor. Its sloped armor and more powerful engine represented genuine advances in Italian tank design. However, development delays and Italy's collapsing industrial situation prevented meaningful production during the war. Only a handful entered service before the Italian armistice, and some were completed under German supervision for Wehrmacht use. The P26/40 demonstrated what Italian designers could achieve when resources permitted, though it arrived far too late to influence combat outcomes. Italian self-propelled guns attempted to provide mobile fire support for mechanized operations. The Semiventa 4732 mounted a 47mm anti-tank gun on a modified L6/40 light tank chassis. This low-profile vehicle offered better protection for its gun crew than towed artillery while maintaining mobility. It proved effective in defensive ambush positions, where its small size aided concealment. However, its limited armor and gun traverse restricted its tactical flexibility. Several hundred served in North Africa and Italy. The Semoventi 7518 represented Italy's most effective self-propelled gun, built on the M13/40 and later M14/41 chassis. It mounted a 75mm infantry support howitzer in a low, enclosed casemate. This weapon proved valuable for engaging fortifications and providing indirect fire support. The vehicle's armor protection and mobility matched contemporary medium tanks, and its powerful main armament gave Italian forces genuine close support capability. German forces appreciated these vehicles so highly that they continued operating captured examples after Italy's armistice. Over 300 were manufactured. The Semoventi 7534 and 7546 variants mounted longer-barreled 75mm guns for improved anti-tank performance. These appeared late in the war as responses to increasingly capable Allied armor. The longer guns provided better penetration at range, though limited production numbers prevented them from significantly impacting Italian defensive operations. The Semoventi 9053 mounted a powerful 90mm anti-aircraft gun on a truck chassis, creating a mobile tank destroyer. This weapon could defeat any Allied tank at combat ranges, and its high velocity made it effective against fortifications. However, the high profile, lack of armor protection, and limited production constrained its employment. Fewer than 50 were built, and most served in fixed defensive positions rather than mobile operations. Italian armored cars provided reconnaissance and security functions across multiple theaters. The auto-blinde AB-40 and improved AB-41 served as standard armored cars throughout the war. These four-wheel drive vehicles mounted a 20mm cannon in a small turret and featured armor up to 8mm thick. Their desert performance proved generally satisfactory, offering good speed and reasonable reliability. The AB-41 added improved armor and a more powerful engine, enhancing combat effectiveness. Italian cavalry units and reconnaissance formations relied heavily on these vehicles, which performed adequately when avoiding direct engagement with heavier forces. Over 500 AB-41 variants were produced, and they served in North Africa, the Balkans, and Italy. The earlier Lancia and Saldo armored cars from the interwar period saw limited service in secondary theaters. Their obsolete design and thin armor made them unsuitable for frontline operations, though some remained in service for rear area security and colonial policing. Motorcycle combinations provided tactical mobility for reconnaissance units and dispatch riders. The Moto Guzzi Alce and Gilera military motorcycles served throughout Italian forces, offering reliable transportation across varied terrain. Sidecar-equipped variants carried machine guns or additional personnel for scout missions. These vehicles proved mechanically dependable and well-suited to Mediterranean conditions. Italian military trucks formed the backbone of logistical operations, though chronic shortages plagued supply operations throughout the war. The Fiat 626 served as the standard medium truck, providing cargo transport for Italian divisions. Its simple design and diesel engine offered reasonable reliability, though its payload capacity and cross-country performance remained limited compared to Allied vehicles. Thousands served across all theaters, many commandeered from civilian use to supplement military production. The Fiat 634 and 666 heavy trucks provided greater cargo capacity for moving artillery, ammunition, and supplies. Their larger engines and robust chassis allowed transport of heavier loads, though production numbers never met military requirements. Italian logistics suffered chronically from insufficient motor transport, forcing reliance on animal-drawn carts and requisitioned civilian vehicles. The SPA Devunk light truck series offered four-wheel drive capability for forward supply runs and artillery towing. These vehicles performed adequately in rough terrain, though mechanical complexity sometimes compromised reliability. Their limited production meant they never fully equipped Italian forces, remaining concentrated in priority units. Alfa Romeo and Bianchi also produced military trucks in various configurations, supplementing Fiat production with vehicles of comparable capability. The diversity of manufacturers and models complicated maintenance and spare parts supply, exacerbating Italian logistical difficulties. Italian forces employed various specialized vehicles for specific tactical roles. The Breda 51 served as a mobile workshop, carrying tools and equipment for field maintenance of armored vehicles. These proved essential for keeping Italian tanks operational in North Africa's harsh conditions, where mechanical failures occurred frequently. Armored recovery vehicles based on modified tank chassis retrieved disabled armor from battlefields. Italian recovery capabilities remained limited compared to Allied forces, contributing to permanent losses of reparable vehicles. This deficiency proved particularly costly in mobile operations, where time constraints prevented thorough recovery efforts. Fuel and water tankers moved essential supplies to forward units operating in desert environments. Water transport proved as critical as ammunition resupply in North African operations, where natural sources remained scarce and contaminated. Italian tanker trucks rarely provided sufficient capacity for sustained operations, forcing rigid adherence to fixed supply lines. Ambulances based on truck chassis evacuated wounded personnel from combat zones. Italian medical services operated with limited motor transport, supplementing ambulances with requisitioned civilian vehicles and animal-drawn carts. This inadequacy contributed to higher mortality rates among wounded soldiers unable to reach medical facilities promptly. Communication vehicles carried radio equipment for command and control. Italian radio technology lagged behind Allied equivalents, and insufficient production of radio vehicles forced reliance on dispatch riders and field telephone lines. This communications deficit hindered coordination during mobile operations. Artillery prime movers towed anti-tank guns, field artillery, and anti-aircraft weapons. Italian forces employed both tracked and wheeled tractors, with the PVCP 4-100 track tractor proving particularly capable in rough terrain. However, limited availability forced continued reliance on horse-drawn artillery in many units. Italian forces also operated captured British vehicles, particularly after the initial successes in North Africa. Matilda tanks, Bren carriers, and various British trucks entered Italian service when local conditions prevented proper disposal or destruction. These vehicles sometimes received Italian markings and served alongside indigenous equipment, creating further logistical complications. After Italy's armistice in September 1943, Italian units fighting alongside Allied forces received American and British equipment. M4 Sherman tanks, M3 Stuart light tanks, and American trucks equipped co-belligerent Italian forces during the campaign up the Italian peninsula. This equipment proved far superior to Italian-manufactured vehicles, demonstrating the technological and industrial gap between Italian and Allied production capabilities. Italian military vehicle designs reflected the nation's limited industrial capacity and strategic materials shortages more than engineering incompetence. Italian designers understood modern armored warfare principles, but manufacturing constraints forced compromises that degraded combat effectiveness. Then armor, inadequate armament, and mechanical complexity plagued Italian vehicles throughout the war. These deficiencies stemmed from Italy's weak industrial base rather than designer failings. The vehicles performed their intended functions adequately when facing poorly equipped opponents, but proved consistently inferior when engaging British and later American forces equipped with superior armor. Italian tactical doctrine attempted to compensate for material deficiencies through maneuver and aggressive action, but no amount of tactical skill could overcome fundamental inadequacies in protection and firepower. The Italian military vehicle experience during the Second World War demonstrates that industrial capacity and access to strategic materials determine the upper limits of military effectiveness, regardless of tactical proficiency or operational planning. These vehicles served soldiers who fought with courage despite inadequate equipment, their shortcomings reflecting national economic realities rather than individual or institutional failure.